from a six-figure salary down to redundancy, and why I'm trying to retire at the age of 47. That's the topic of today's video. I figured it was probably time to walk you through my career, the jobs that I've held, and also the taboo topic of the salaries that I earned in each of those positions. And I thought, for the sake of transparency, I would share with you my career path. So let's talk about it. Today is the 2nd of September, and I've sat this morning, watched my way through my LinkedIn profile and reminded me of the dates and years, and as best as I could find, approximate salaries I was earning in each of those jobs, so that I could share that with you here on this channel. So let's start at the very beginning. My very first job that I was able to apply for at the age of 15, just as I'd received my national insurance card through the door, just ahead of my 16th birthday in January, was at a company in the UK called Halfords. Halfords is a car and bike retailer, and I started there working part-time in 1994, and that part-time job paid an annual salary of £6,000. That's what I picked up as my first wage, and I can remember distinctly my dad saying to me at the time, if you're going to leave school and do a job, you're going to have to pay your way here. So I carried on for another year part-time while still at school, doing my standard grades, and then I took the decision that I would leave school and take up the opportunity to work full-time at Halfords. And I didn't go to university, I didn't go to college, I don't have a degree, I didn't have any higher education, and just went straight into a job to work. And so I started working full-time at Halfords in 1995. That was also the same year that I met Yvonne and we started dating. Yep, 1995. And my salary for the full-time job there, working between 5 and 6 days a week, depending on the store requirements, was £12,000 per year. And I was paying my dad, I think, £300 a month rent, because he made sure that as soon as I left school I had to be paying something, and that was kind of a lifelong lesson on bills and living and everything else that you had to look after as an adult in the working environment. And so, looking for career progression, in 1997 I applied for a job and managed to get it working for a company called Sound and Vision, which was a TV, video, hi-fi electrical store based in Scotland, owned by a company called Scottish Power. And that's just where Yvonne happened to be working at the time. She had saw the job on an internal board, sent it to me, I applied and I got the job, and I was working in Parkhead Forge over in Glasgow, quite a rough area of the city, selling TVs, hi-fis and videos. And when I joined that company in 97, I joined on a 14k a year salary, so a 2k increase from my job at Halfords. But within that job at Scottish Power, I worked as a store salesperson and eventually managed to work my way up over a couple of years to being the store manager in East Kilbride, where I was living, and at this point now in a flat with Yvonne. And I ended up remaining in Scottish Power for a total of 16 years, working there from 97 till I eventually left at Christmas in 2012. And over that time I held a multitude of different jobs, working in energy departments, doing internal auditing, and then as I was leaving I was a national account manager for the new house build division, looking after partners like Bellway, Wimpey, Persimmon, looking after their metering to new properties. That was the position there. And at the time when I left in 2012, I had scraped and clawed my way up to an annual salary of £28,000 a year. So that takes us to Christmas 2012. During those years working at Scottish Power, I think it would be fair to say I had one foot in the career path and the other foot in this other world of being a DJ, a producer, making dance music, musician, travelling all around the UK, Europe and further afield to play shows, whilst feeling like, well, I've got this career path. But it wasn't until the very later years, probably 2010 to 2012, when I actually started to genuinely apply myself. The career of the DJ, I felt, had ran its course. I'd had a serious back injury, putting myself in hospital and out of work for medical reasons, ultimately with a fractured spine, a broken arm. It kind of reset my brain a little bit as to what I needed to focus on for me, for Yvonne, my wife, girlfriend at the time, and just trying to build a bit of a life. So at that point, I really started to think about developing my career. So in late 2012, I took the opportunity, after 16 years at Scottish Power, to leave the company and seek out a new opportunity. And of course, new career path and potentially more money. That was the goal. So at the end of December in 2012, I had the opportunity, having applied for a job, to relocate to England, take up a business development position at a company called Belkin, a Californian-based technology business that had a distribution centre and a sales office in Rushden near Northampton. And with the opportunity of a position on the table with a salary of £38,000, 10k up from my position at Scottish Power, I took that opportunity, knew that if I relocated to England I could really boost my career and boost the opportunity of a higher salary, and again just trying to improve the lifestyle for Yvonne and I. So I applied, I got the job, and I accepted the relocation. And so then started the next 6 months of moving to England, working hard in that job, living on my own, flat sharing with somebody for a period of time before I was able to find a small apartment that Yvonne could also move and live with me. That took 6 to 8 months in total of 2013, and Yvonne was then able to also find a job working in Milton Keynes, and at that we felt that we had finally got our footing in England and established ourselves in these new jobs. So I worked at Belkin as a business development manager, basically a kind of junior account manager on a 38k salary, and I was there from 2013 until 2016 when I eventually took another opportunity in London, this time to move. But as I exited Belkin, I had increased my salary over those years from 2013 to 2016 from 38k a year to 45k a year. Now there was sales bonuses on top of that, so providing you had a good quarter or a good year, you could top that salary up. But it took a lot of commitment. It was a really big decision for us to walk away from friends, family, and the life that we'd built in Scotland. But for me, I just needed a change of environment, and to work with different people in different organisations and try and strengthen my career path. And so at this point then, in 2016, I had the opportunity to join British Gas, working for a company called Hive, a smart tech division of the business. And I joined the organisation on a 58k salary. So having left Belkin on 45k, I'd increased the salary to 58k as a UK retail manager in that position. And I worked in that job for 3 years and 11 months. And in that time, I grew the 58k salary up to 65k. And at that point, that really felt like, I've more than doubled my salary earnings in Scotland by moving to initially England, working in the Midlands, to eventually then moving job-wise to London and commuting daily from Northampton into central London, 5 days a week for that job. Having had a successful period of close to 4 years managing the UK retail team, I managed to secure a promotion to be the European Retail Sales Manager. That meant that I was now responsible not only for the UK and Ireland, but also for Italy, France, and any other regions that the company was looking to open up at that time. I took that position in 2019 with a salary of 78k. So having stepped out of a role at 65k, looking after only the UK, greater responsibility, more travel, more stress, but with a salary of £78,000 for doing that job. And I remained in that position for a full year. Just 1 year. I was promoted to being the Commercial Sales Director at British Gas Hive. I was responsible for all of the sales departments within the organisation. So from 2019 onwards, and at this point my salary was increased again, this time from the 78k to £98,000. Responsibility for many people within multiple departments and carrying the pressure of the sales organisation for all of Hive within many different markets. And as that position rolled into 2020, I'd felt that I'd been at the organisation for long enough now that a change felt like it was on the horizon for me, and I was headhunted by a recruiter to offer me an opportunity to work for an international business based in Germany to do an equivalent role that I was managing at Hive, and we started to talk. Now this would have been early in 2020, just before the pandemic kicked in, and after multiple meetings and various interviews, the position was shelved. It was put on hold because lockdowns, etc. were starting to look like they would be a possibility. So I put that position to one side and carried on my job at Hive. Now, as the year progressed, British Gas themselves found themselves in a position where they wanted to make redundancies, and my role at Hive was going to be rolled up into an overall position within British Gas. Now, having spent 16 years working at Scottish Power, being part of an organisation with tens of thousands of people, at Hive, although British Gas, it was an organisation that was just a few hundred people, and I really liked working in that environment. I could get to know people, I could build a lot of relationships, and more importantly, I could get things done without so much red tape that you often see at big organisations. So, as October rolled round of 2020, the new company that had sought me out previously in the year re-engaged in negotiations and started to talk about hiring again. And so I went through that interview process. Now, at the exact same time I was having negotiations about my role at Hive, there was a redundancy opportunity, or I could take a slightly lower salary, no car benefits and no bonus benefits, and manage a significantly bigger team. And at that, I kind of felt like the writing was on the wall, and for me it was an opportunity to take a redundancy, hopefully negotiate a redundancy, and walk straight into a new job doing a very similar role to what I'd already been doing at Hive. So I undertook that task, and I managed to navigate my way through it, walking away with a severance package from British Gas and almost immediately walking into this new role at this European organisation. So that brings us to the last job that I've held, or the last company that I held a job at. And I started within that organisation in December of 2020. And when I joined that company, they were a significantly smaller business than the Hive organisation, and they knew my reputation, they knew what I had delivered there, and so in order to acquire my services, they offered me a salary of £127,000 per year. So having been at Hive on 98k, that was a reasonable enough offer for me to move over to that European business, and within that role I was managing all of their UK operations. So from 2020, late 2020, through to 2022, I remained in the same role managing the UK, and then in 2023, January of 2023, they offered me a promotion to manage a particular sales channel for all of Europe. However, the promotion didn't come with a salary increase. I was to remain on the 127k and prove my worth. I love these kind of negotiations, right, where you get the opportunity to step up, but the business doesn't actually want to reward you for the work that goes into it. Instead, it's seen as a test. And so I did that for 1 year without any salary increase, this time travelling all over Europe multiple times a year. In fact, I was going to Germany almost twice a month. That's what I meant to say, twice a month. And so I was going to Germany, working out of the German office and doing this higher role for a full year without any additional compensation. But I appreciate 127k is a lot of money and certainly improved my lifestyle and my life with Yvonne, and I was very grateful for the experience. In 2024, after going through a full year with no salary increase and technically 3 years at the organisation without any salary increase, the business reviewed the position that I was in and decided to increase my salary from May of 2024 to 141,000. So that was 127 to 141 after 3 full years in the job. And again, incredibly grateful. I worked hard to get to that position and felt that I was growing a business and growing a channel, and in return for that 141k, my channel was responsible for bringing in multiple millions of pounds on behalf of the business. So 2024, May, I received that salary increase, and by November of that year, I had been confirmed that I would be made redundant from that job, and the reason given was too high a salary. And so started the redundancy process. Now, I haven't named that business because I don't want to call them out. I would say that having worked in that position for 3 years and continually delivered, continually met the metrics that were put out for me each year, I felt that I was living up to my side of the bargain. Now, I appreciate businesses have to go through redundancies, and I think in these moments it always comes down to just how you handle it. And I was probably at that phase ready to go. I kind of had enough of the travel. I was feeling a bit exhausted, a bit burned out. 2024 was the year my father died. And as I mentioned before, there was a light bulb went off in my head during that 2 days after my dad had passed away, as I was sitting in a funeral care planning out his funeral. A senior manager texted me and said, "Sorry to hear about your dad, strong arm emoji, love heart emoji, could you join a sales call this afternoon?" And I think that was the point in my head where I thought, yeah, this isn't the business for me. This isn't where I want to continue putting my efforts. So when the redundancy talk came round, I was relatively okay with that. What I wasn't okay with was how the business went about it. And what they did there were some incredibly sneaky and dark tactics to make sure that they could remove people from the business as cheaply as possible. Had we just ended that period with us shaking hands and me leaving, everybody would have been in a good place. But instead, what they did was super uncool and left an incredibly bitter taste in my mouth. And I've eventually walked away from that business at the end of last year, once we eventually settled on the figure with another payout. So I had been made redundant from British Gas, had a payout, and I had banked that money, put that aside, invested it, and now I found myself being made redundant again, this time by my current role, European sales role, and it had a massive impact on me health-wise. As I explained in my very first video, days after that happened, I ended up in hospital having severe panic attacks, something I had never had in my whole life. My father had just passed away and I was struggling to deal with the fallout of it, managing his property, his home, and working for a business that had as much respect for me as to send me a text message asking me to join a sales call with a strong arm emoji and a love heart. That's how people valued the death of somebody's father. So I was okay with leaving, I just wasn't okay with how they handled it. But I walked away from that position on 141k a year salary, and at that point I felt burned out, broken by the system, being taxed into oblivion, being what I felt undervalued here in the UK for my contributions, now facing ill health and unable to actually get any real medical assistance. As I mentioned, when I had the panic attack, I ended up in hospital. Yvonne called an ambulance, couldn't get one. I ended up in hospital and I was in a chair in a corridor for 16 hours on morphine, didn't see a doctor, and I went home, and at that point I felt checked out. I felt depressed, I felt lonely, I felt burned out, I felt broken by the whole process that I'd gone through with that company, and it just felt to me like it could have been done better. And that is where I find myself. At that point, I turned 47 at the beginning of this year with a small amount of money in the bank and a willingness to just want to change my life. And that's what motivated me to walk out of my house on the 9th of January and pick up this camera and talk to the camera exactly as I'm talking to you now about what had happened. But that's been my career path. As I mentioned earlier, I didn't go to university, I didn't go to college, I don't have degrees. I've just worked hard, and I hope you can see through that career path that I've navigated my way through multiple positions and always managing to level up in each one of those roles, increasing my salary, taking risks, moving countries, okay, from Scotland to England, but 350 miles away from your friends and family was a big commitment, chasing a better life financially for Yvonne and I. And within all of that, we were able to get married, we were able to do many things, including save a little bit of cash, just a little bit here or there through wise decisions. And that is where you now find me. I've gone from 141k a year salary to earning £800 last month on YouTube. And I'll tell you this before I sign this off. Despite all of the troubles, stresses and everything else that I've shared with you in past videos, I've never felt happier than I feel right at this point right now, about to embark on this next adventure to see how we can make that work. So, any comments on any of that? Anything else you would like to know? Any other feedback you would like to share with me? I would appreciate that. And in the meantime, I'm just going to show here the names of the people that have joined the membership recently to say thank you from me to you for sponsoring this video and this channel. We'll see you in the next one.